Right, so good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the full council this evening. I am the Mayor of Rugby, Councillor Maggie O'Rourke, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. This meeting is being web streamed, so the public through the council's YouTube channel will be watching during the meeting. And if you wish to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I will ask the Chief Executive to provide details of the evacuation procedure for those present in the event of a fire. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everybody. There isn't a fire drill scheduled this evening, so if you do hear the alarm, please make your way down the main staircase, and our congregation point is at the entrance to Caldecott Park, and please wait for an officer to give instructions to come back into the building. Thank you. Madam Mayor, we have apologies tonight from Councillors Poole and Mrs Robinson.
Item 2, to approve the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Council held on the 25th of October 2023. I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Council held on the 25th of October be approved and adopted. Who will second the motion?
I will second the motion, Madam Mayor.
In favour, please show. That's carried. Declarations of interest. So can I remind all the members that when they declare interest, they must also declare the general nature of that interest. Are there any declarations under non-pecuniary interest as defined by the Councillors' Code of Conduct for councillors? Yes, Councillor Woodhouse.
Item 7B. I'm not sure I still want to go back on it, but there you go.
The same, item 7B.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got two. So agenda number 6A, item 3, the football pitch improvement. I'm the chairman of Lawford United Football Club. And also 6A, item 6, support of the voluntary and community sector. I'm a member of the Long Lawford Community Association. Thank you.
Agenda item 6, number 6. I'm a trustee of Oversley Community Centre. Thank you.
Mr Brown.
Agenda item 6. I'm chair of the Oversley Community Centre.
Councillor Robbins.
It's the same one. I'm the trustee of the Brownsover Community Association.
Are there any more?
Thank you, Mayor. Item 6.7, the Housing Revenue Stock Condition Survey. Item non-pecuniary in relation to my employment outlined on the Register of Interests.
Councillor Timms.
Item 6.6A, as chair of the Long Lawford Community Association.
Councillor
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Also a member of the Long Lawford Community Association.
Councillor Rabin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a member of the Brownsover Community Association and also have a community interest company and a director of that.
Which is pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for councillors. No. C, notice under section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. You've all paid your taxes, that's good. Moving on to item 4, the Mayor's announcement. Announcements, I should say. I've got a few, but not too many. One of the things I hadn't got in my announcements, but I did want to mention, in the November meeting, I mentioned that there was going to be a Diwali celebration, and indeed there was, and I want to sort of put on record my thanks to all those people involved, particularly Councillor Ish Mystery. It was an extremely successful event, and it was good to see officers there and our Chief Executive as well marching with us in the Lantern Parade, and it was, I think all will agree, a great success. So thank you for that. Very good. There was also recently the second Lantern Parade, and I have to say it was very good. There were quite a few hundred people there and it went very well. So thank you to, obviously I know Rugby First were leading it, but thank you to all those community organisations that supported it, and there were quite a lot of them. Again, Issues community, the Indian community, but also the artists and makers and other sort of businesses in the town supported the event, and it was really, really good. So thank you. So also, last Saturday, I attended the the Rugby Male Voice Choir Christmas concert at St George's Church, and all the proceeds of that concert were donated to my charity, Rugby Mighton Hospice. I'd like to put on record my thanks to the Male Voice Choir for their generous donation, and also to the Dunchurch Voices who were singing that evening as well. I'd like to say thank you as well, particularly to Hawks, the estate agents in town, who coordinated a donation of biscuits for my charity, the Rugby Mighton. This is a small gesture, but it makes such a huge difference to those in care at the hospice and to their families when visiting loved ones. So thank you to them. Next one is our two daring chief officers, Mike Connell and Tom Kittenall, did their bungee jump last weekend in aid of Mighton Hospice. And they smashed their target of 500. I haven't got the final figure, but I know it's well past that. Oh, wow, wow, wow. Can I say a huge thanks to you? I have, for those of you that are interested, if you follow the Mayor of Rugby on my Facebook and Instagram, I have a video recording of Tom flying like a bird through the sky. And also the both of them at the bottom when they completed the jump. I can't imagine what it was like. I've been told it was great, but thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. And I am sort of working on a few of the other senior officers now to come up with some different ideas about challenges in the next few months to support the charity. It's all good fun. It's about teamwork. Next item is, I have to say it wasn't very good news for the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor's Secretary in terms of their skydive. So it's been postponed again for the second time. So I phoned Simon up because we went last time and we were going again, but obviously it was very foggy, and I suppose it's a little bit dangerous to jump out for a plane when it's a bit foggy and misty out there. So anyway, big thank you, and hopefully it will happen on the 31st of December, and I'll be waiting for you in Dutch after you've done your jump with a glass of fizzy. So good luck to you. Right. And the final bit is thank you to the representatives of the Women's Socialist Network group who visited the parlour recently, and they brought donations of food for the food bank, and it amounted to hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So just like to put that on record as well, my thanks. Moving on to item 5, questions pursuant to Standing Order 10. Are there any questions, Chief Executive?
Madam Mayor, we have 4 questions this evening. Question A is from Councillor Sanderson. He's submitted a question for the Leisure and Wellbeing Portfolio holder, Councillor Daly, regarding the condition of Winfield Recreation Ground following the firework display last month.
Any supplementary questions?
Yes, I have a supplementary, Madam Mayor. I was going to thank the portfolio holder for his reply, but it was so short. There was no apology to the local residents. There was no apology to the rugby runners who also who've had the council events, and there was no sense of diplomacy in terms of cooperation with ward members in terms of looking at how we solve these problems. We do have a number of events that are organised by this organisation within the ward. A little cooperation and collaboration usually goes a long way.
Can I just clarify that the question is an apology in terms of what had happened? Because you did talk for a little while.
What had happened is the local resident...
I'm asking, is the question that you're seeking an apology from the portfolio holder because of what happened?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. it is completely clearly unacceptable for the community that's been affected by the fireworks. The fireworks is normally a tremendous event. However, disappointingly this year, the condition of the ground wasn't acceptable after the event. And I know there was a number of mitigating factors, particularly the heavy rain that that was there before the event, which then led to the particularly bad damage to the football pitches and to the area alongside the paths. So I am sorry to the residents of Eastlands Ward, particularly, that were most affected by this. I will get in touch with you after the Safety Advisory Group meeting on the 20th of December, as soon as I've had feedback from that meeting, what we could do going forwards, because this can't happen again. This can't happen again. So, yeah, I will get back in touch with you after the Safety Advisory Group. Of course, we are extremely sorry this has happened, because this is a council park that everyone across Rugby uses, and it has been damaged. It's affected the park room, which is, I'm sure I'm going to be speaking about that in a moment again, as well, which is unacceptable. And yeah, it's not good enough. So I'm looking forward to hearing these discussions from the Safety Advisory Group about what we do to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Councillor. Questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have question B from Councillor Ms Livesey. She submitted a question for the Communities Homes Digital and Communications Portfolio Holder, Councillor Willis, concerning the number of occasions this year the Council has been unable to collect rent via direct debit and what steps were taken to prevent it from happening in the future.
So, Livesey, have you got any supplementary questions? No, we haven't.
We have question C, which is also from Councillor Ms Livesey, and it's also a question for the same portfolio holder, Councillor Willis, concerning the publication date of the Council's financial inclusion strategy.
Have a supplementary question? Thank you.
So thank you for your very detailed and comprehensive answer. However, I would like to know at which meeting was the decision made not to proceed with the publication or the creation of a financial inclusion strategy, and who attended?
Thank you, Councillor Livesey. I don't have that information to hand, but I will, of course, take that away and provide you with a full and detailed answer at the earliest opportunity. Many thanks.
Madam Mayor, the final question, question D, is from Councillor Moran. He submitted a question for the Leisure and Wellbeing Portfolio Holder, Councillor Daly, concerning the recent cancellation of Rugby Park Run.
Councillor Moran, have you got a supplementary question?
So obviously I'll be careful not to cover the ground. Councillor Sanderson made the point, and an apology clearly would be appreciated too. Thank you very much. The follow-up question I wanted was in relation to dialogue, because the response intimates that there was dialogue. The organisers of Park Run probably disagree. Initially they were told that there was an indefinite postponement, and then there was an absence of any communication for nearly 3 weeks. So that's clearly unacceptable, and can we please ensure that much better dialogue takes place well in advance of next year's Park Run, also the continuing Park Runs ahead of next year's events?
Thank you, Councillor Moran. Yeah, again, as I said to Councillor Sanderson, I apologise for the impact this has had on Park Run runners. Councillor Moran and we've spoken before about my love of sport and how important I feel sport is for the community. And Park Run is a great example. I think 170 odd runners on average every week. I've never done Rugby Park Run. I've done a number of other park runs around the area. And it's a real shame that now over a month that event hasn't been able to happen, because that is an important part of an awful lot of people's Saturday mornings. There does seem to be an issue with communication between the council and Park Run, and I hope that doesn't happen again. It does sound as if Park Run are going to be back up and running, pardon the pun, from a week on Saturday. So I'm really glad that they are able to get back up and running, and that they are able to. I think they're going to make a slight alteration to their route so that they're able to get around the damage to the football pitches, particularly. So again, I can only apologise for the damage that was caused and the delay in getting Park Run back on again.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6, to receive the report of the Cabinet dated the 4th of December 2023. In submitting the report of Cabinet, if members wish to raise questions or to comment or to make amendments, they will please indicate they wish to do so when I call the item. Councillor Picker, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report titled Modification of the Willoughby Neighbourhood Plan and Agreement of the Schedule of Change?
Madam Mayor, I so move.
Who will second it?
I will second it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This is a relatively basic report covering minor amendments to the Willoughby Neighbourhood Plan. All the details are set out in the report. This is a standard part of keeping all neighbourhood plans up to date, and I hope that all members will support it. Thank you.
Any speakers? No? Then? No, sorry, we don't. Sorry. We move on. Do you want to, you're not going to say anything else because you've just spoken and nobody else says you don't want to write to reply? No? Oh, that's good. Okay, that's all good. Right, so moving on then, Councillor Day, would you move the confirmation and adoption of item 2 of the report titled Creation of the Duty Manager Post at the Ben Hall?
I also move, Madam Mayor.
Who will second it?
Madam Mayor, I will second it.
Councillor Day, would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've seen the service at the Ben Hall grow with increased bookings, bar sales and ticket incomes, and they are now exceeding pre-pandemic delivery. The capacity of the building is therefore dependent on the ability to effectively staff and manage events, and this has led to overtime working, additional casual staffing, or in some cases the actual refusal of bookings. So by taking on this additional member of staff, it will allow the service to be add capacity, to the service. The current staffing structure should deliver the performance and operational objectives consists of only 130 hours per week, and they are relying significantly on a pool of casual bar staff. There are already 60% of weekend days booked for 2024, and it's expected that 2024 and 2025 bookings will see similar levels of in excess of 80% at weekends at the Ben Hall. There will also be a saving for the council, as we currently, and last year as an example, we spent £29,000 on casual staff against a budget of £11,000. So I think this is a much needed appointment. I think it will add capacity to continue to grow a service which has grown considerably over the last few years. I think it's been a genuine turnaround from the officers at the Ben Hall. I just want to thank the staff at the Ben Hall for all their hard work for ensuring that this is an event space that we have in Rugby that people want to come to, want to perform at, and then want to attend events at.
Any speakers?
Yes, I'd like to speak, please. Oh,
yeah, can I thank the portfolio holder for his report? It's some time ago we were actually talking about closing the Ben Hall down, and if it wasn't for the diligent work of a group of overview and scrutiny members who helped officers turn the place around and the report around that it should stay open again and it should become a more commercially viable entity, then we will probably not have the Ben Hall today. So I'm very pleased with the portfolio holder's report.
Councillor Moran.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just really wanted to touch on something which might become a theme of this evening, that the fact that there are a number of bookings at the Ben Hall is great, but it seems to me it's an example of being reactive, not proactive. So, in your own words, bookings may have been turned down because of a lack of resource and staff, which is a shame. And I think what is important that this council collectively can become more growth-focused, more thinking about the future, and better strategic planning, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we're looking to create a staff member instead of a host of kind of temporary bookings. So it's great that this appointment has been made, but can we not look forward more, please?
Any more speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to follow up and say what a great story this is. And I think it's something we should be really proud of, that we're getting these extra bookings. So it's just really positive as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Do you want your reserve right, or are we going straight to...
Very briefly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to say thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I will echo that thanks then to that group. I think that might have been before my time, but I'm very much glad that the Ben Hall hasn't closed down and that it is still here and that it's flourishing at the moment. I think it's a genuine good news story for rugby. In response to Councillor Moran, it is really disappointing if we do have to. If we can't take on bookings because of lack of capacity. We did take on extra capacity a couple of years ago, and actually we are taking on this additional member of staff. You know, despite we haven't got all of the weekends booked for next year, but we know that that's probably going to happen. We know that based on data from the last few years, we know we're going to see that trend, that increase in booking. So I think we are being proactive in a way, in that we're taking on this extra member of staff now, so that we can definitely take those bookings on next year and more, hopefully.
Councillor Daly, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 3 of the report titled Football Pitch Improvement Programme?
I so move.
Who will second?
Madam Mayor, I will second the motion.
Thank you. Speakers, or the report?
Thank you. I've spoken more tonight than the last few meetings combined. This is a fantastic bit of news for the council, I believe. Again, going back to my love of sport, and this is great to be able to introduce something like this. This is a comprehensive 6-year improvement programme in partnership with the Football Foundation and seeks formal approval to enter a partnership with Rugby and District Sunday League to enable community funding from the Football Foundation. That's funding that this council wouldn't be able to get itself. That's why we're having to enter into this partnership with Rugby and District Sunday League. It will see pitch improvements to council-managed public football pitches. These pitches will see improvements to drainage, soil base and turf quality. The works over the next 6 years will cost just over £200,000, which the Football Foundation will contribute 50%. The other remaining £102,000 will be funded through Section 106 contributions that are specifically ring-fenced for the maintenance of council-owned sports pitches. The council doesn't actually have to create a supplementary budget until the 3rd year of this project, when the Section 106 contributions would be brought forward. So there will be a net nil budget this year and next year, and then it will only affect 26-27. It will improve the council pitches from a poor condition to a good condition, which should allow more football to be played on them, and it increases our capacity for football within the district. And the improvements will be made at Winfield Rec, Ashlawn Road Recreation Ground, the GEC, and Alwyn Road GEC Recreation Ground, I should say, and Alwyn Road Recreation Ground in Bilton. Thank you.
Please. Councillor Daly, would you like your right to reply?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Okay, so moving on. Councillor Miss Robbins, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 4 of the report titled Finance and Performance Monitoring 23-24 Quarter 2?
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Who will second the motion?
Madam Mayor, I will second the motion.
Robbins, would you like to introduce the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The item for consideration on this report is the Appendix 3, which was an amendment to the report that went to Cabinet concerning voids. And I call on my colleague, Councillor Mrs Watson-Merritt, who will give a full report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Roothouse. Mystery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of points, general points really, to start with. Of course, we await for the local government settlement, December the 19th, and we will start to see what flows from that into there. And it's quite clear this year that local government has been kicked in the proverbials yet again, with hardly any settlement coming through to it, which is going to put extra pressures onto the financial elements that we've got. I noted from the report the references to planning income, green waste and parking income as well, which is going to just compound onto the particular financial issues that we have. I also noted that dear old Caldecott Developments is just sitting there doing nothing, and my view is that as a council we need to sort it out, really. It's just sitting there, and it hasn't delivered anything at all in what it could do. And I do ask the portfolio holder that we need to get to grips with that and get that sorted. I wanted to briefly turn also to within the report and highlighting out that, of course, our establishment figure should be about 415 to 413 full-time employees, and we're actually at about 366 in the establishment with the vacancies of 47. And that's also in comms, homes, digital, and the rest of it. There's about 14 full-time equivalents, which is the vacancy rate in there. And operations and trade, it is 12. And quite clearly there's an issue around the vacancy rates and the full-time equivalents that we've got between the establishment that we should be at and where everything's at. You know, and there was a discussion at the leaders group last night about capacity, and perhaps this is a demonstration of that capacity issue, which I was talking about at leaders last night, that capacity is a word, but actually we need to demonstrate what that actually means and how that is turned into productivity for the organisation going forward. And the reports itself also needs to clearly start explaining more about the HR element and the particular elements of sickness, how long those sickness levels are as well. And quite clearly, as we go through this budget round, if we are to deliver on a lot of elements within here in the corporate delivery plan and deliver those at pace, for me at the moment, we don't have the staff to do all of that at that particular time with the other pressures that come in and are made on the staff at the time. So there's something to grasp there, and I would call on the other leaders that we do need to get to grips with that over this budget cycle and actually start looking at that. So the outcomes when we make a budget settlement in hopefully February, I see if parties come to an agreement, we could be here for days, who knows, but there you go. Getting that, John was wincing at that point, but but we do need to, that's one of the biggest areas. If you're going to reduce services or whatever, it's about the employee basis, and that just lays it bare in this report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mystery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to add too much. I think any money that comes in is welcome, and this is very much a county-wide project that we jointly work, and it'll go, I wouldn't say a long way, but go some way to address some of the issues the vulnerable people are facing, and hopefully, like Councillor Rudolph says, there's a long way to do things that we should be doing better. Thank you.
I will ask...
Sorry, Councillor. Sorry, Madam Mayor, apologies. I just wanted to finish on something that my colleague, Councillor Mystery, was saying. And also, I think also what Councillor Roothouse was saying, that it must be very, very tough, being a portfolio holder for finance with a local authority at the moment, given the chaos and the circus that exists at Westminster and not knowing what's going to happen until virtually the last day before Christmas. So, notwithstanding that, I wanted to make the point that I think was touched on, where there's not an acceptance here that the finances of this council are on their knees. It's not a good news story. Rugby Brough Council's finances are in a poor state. And they've been in a poor state for many, many years. But nothing has been done about it. There is no contingency, there is no plan to activate any form of positive growth. All it talks about, in terms of the playbook, is cuts in jobs and cuts in services. That's not acceptable. And we have this absolute ridiculous misnomer of calling this council a high-growth council, as if it's some sort of badge of honour. That's ridiculous. Growth at the expense of quality of life is not growth that's worth pursuing at any cost. There is no metric, no feedback whatsoever that this council is doing a good job in looking after the people we serve. So ambition is misplaced, and all we try and pursue is the most narrowest metric of growth, which is more housing, more development. The budget is clear. Without those planning applications being approved, that would be a further loss of income. So the position would be even worse. There's no proactive, concerted attempt to make life better for people in this town, and that's a shame. And I think at some point there's got to be a reality that the finances of this council are not good, A, and B, that there is no active strategic planning to make that case better. Councillor Roodhouse alluded to the council's development company. It's a shell. It does nothing. We're in this cost of living crisis. We've got budgets, under extreme pressure, and you cannot tell me one single thing, positive effort that's been done that will make a difference to the people here of Rugby. And then the last thing, because I've got the final opportunity, sorry if this is funny, that you find it amusing that the council is in such a state, but I'll carry on. I made a comment at a previous council that for some reason this council has not collected community infrastructure levy. My assessments are that it's approximately 20 million. This council, over the last 10 or 13 years, has not collected. When I raised the question to you, Councillor Picker, you skillfully deflected it to talk about the future, and that going forward you might look at trying to ensure that the SIL development tax is collected. That's all very well. But can I get an answer now from you, those of you that have been councillors for that number of years, why didn't you collect the community infrastructure levy? What is your answer to that? And how do you explain that relating now to our council finances?
Any more speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm quite happy to come back on a few of those points. Firstly, I think if you recall, the council was recently visited by the Corporate Peer Challenge from the Local Government Association, and I don't think anything you've just said is really backed up by their assessment of our finances, but we will come to that in due course. In terms of opportunities for growth, there are some that haven't worked as well as we might hope that they had. If you want an example of where this council has invested and is making a return, Shareborne Recycling Facility. You know this because I've told you about it. So the idea that there is no ambition whatsoever in terms of opportunities for investment and commercialisation is simply not true. In terms of SIL, I have said before and I will say again, once I became portfolio holder, I took forward the process for delivering SIL. Your figures for £20 million over however many years, the problem with trying to work out what our SIL contributions might have been is that obviously our SIL contributions and our Section 106 contributions interact with one another. So you wouldn't necessarily get the full SIL amount if you were collecting Section 106 as well. They do work. That is. In terms of planning income, and I know that was brought up at Cabinet, and obviously, like many local planning authorities, we've obviously not had as much planning income as we might normally do due to the situation in the wider economy. Obviously, planning fees are rising and are being index-linked for the first time ever by this government. And we have the local government finance settlement coming shortly, which will give us a clearer picture, and Councillor Robbins will touch on that in more detail. But I think there was an implication that the only way we can improve planning finances is by approving applications. I would just like to point out that planning fees come in irrespective of whether the planning application is approved or not. So on that point, it's irrespective of whether we approve the planning applications, we still get the planning fees. I think that's everything I wanted to touch on, but thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor, are you... Sorry, I thought Councillor Watson-Merritt was speaking. No? Okay. Councillor Robinson, would you like to come back? Okay. Are you sure? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't sure at which point I was allowed to interject. So before you in the finance and performance monitoring was brought to Cabinet some days ago as a late appendix, the supplementary request for a budget that should, in retrospect, have had more time in front of this council. However, it comes to council against a backdrop of two things, or three things actually, but I'll deal with the two that affect this vote this evening. The increasing costs against planned finances and the increasing demands against planned finances, and those demands meaning the voids that we are now seeing come to us. They are not unprecedented, but they are more frequent and of an unusual nature. Those of you who attended Michelle Dixon, our Chief Officer of Homes and Communities, recent lovely invitation where we were hosted by her and her team would understand that portfolio better. It is a complex one. It requires some of our biggest budgets, and it also employs some of the biggest teams in our council. So it always has been a budget requirement. This time, you could say that it was a supplementary budget called to this council very late, and you ask yourself why that was. And again, I go back to these increased demands and the increased costs of labour and a variety of different reasons created this domino effect. One of those two was the increasing costs that the Brexit changes had on us as a country. Also, the supply of materials. And you would see this all in the private sector as well, as landlords across the country and the boroughs find themselves in an exact similar position. Do they keep their housing stock or do they sell it? And guess what they've been doing it? Selling by the droves across the country. We as a council hold this stock. It belongs to our residents. In a sense, we have an obligation to them. Many are generations of people living in social security homes in this borough. They are some of the most vulnerable in our society. And those of you, Isabel Mackenzie, raised some excellent questions on that day when we visited Michelle Dixon's team. Again, Councillor Harrington was there. We found out a lot of the detail that was required. Councillor Shrivastava had some incredible, interesting questions to put to us as portfolio holders. And I'll take those forward because it gave us an insight into what the requirements are for these particular tenants. Some of them are living longer. 10 of our void properties would come to us as, and it's an unusual name we call them, they're called General, help me Michelle, General, my computer's just switched itself off, so just bear with me when I go back, because I've got some notes on that. Right, they are called in housing sector general need properties. So these have been returned to us as voids in 2023, 10 in particular. Homes and Communities have interrogated the data and the ages of those recently deceased tenants and can advise that the oldest tenant of a general needs property returned to us recently this year was 96. So you can imagine how long that tenant had had the private right to his property, where he didn't need the council to intervene or interfere in his right to live and enjoy his property, as would be the case with private landlords. We weren't required to fit any new kitchens or do any alterations, and in fact that elderly resident preferred that we didn't change anything, because he was very comfortable in his circumstances and his carers visited. However, at the end of a lot of these voids, there is what we call a complete refit in those general properties. 5 of the 10 properties were aged 79 and older. The average age for people passing away in our general needs housing this year was 76 years of age. The average age of people passing away in our sheltered housing this year was 77 years of age. That gives you an idea of how much longer people are needing these properties. And in fact, the time when they come to us, they are creating an unusual demand. So thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, I'm so sorry. But I hope this, and the report that you've had dealt with some of the unusual requests. So I would heartily, put to you, if there are any other questions you'd like to ask me on this tonight, the reason why it's needing the supplementary budget is because there are genuine additional needs and requirements. So I would happily encourage you to vote for the. Thank you.
Can we move to Councillor Robbins? Would you like your right to reply? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Right, first of all, Jerry. Yes, there's not a lot there that I can't disagree with. Yes, we're still waiting for the settlement, and it's very frustrating, but I am quite sure that once we get it, we will find that we not only have a balanced budget, but that we are actually moving forward. Green waste is something that we will be dealing with, and I think you'll find that will be something that will come up with regards to the budget setting, as will indeed parking. Caldecott Development Company is being looked at as we speak, so I'm quite sure we will have some news on that in the very near future. Employees recruitment is a problem. We are having problems with recruitment, but we are actively seeking new people to come to this organisation. I think it's a brilliant organisation to work for, and I'm sorry that we are having such problems, and we really need to look into why that is happening. Capacity, yes, it is affecting our capacity to work, and that, of course, affects the workforce themselves, which actually results sometimes in the workforce not being very happy with their work. So it is something that really needs to be looked at, and it needs to be done urgently. Ish, I'm sorry, I didn't actually write down what you'd said. I'm sorry, I will come back to you on that. Okay, Councillor Moran. I'm just wondering which council it is you're talking about, because it certainly isn't this one. To tell us that we are on our knees, absolute rubbish. Total and utter rubbish. This council is not on its knees. We have several millions of pounds in reserves, I think something around between up to 50 million. And those reserves will see us in good stead no matter what happens. In the meantime, we develop a balanced budget every year, year on year. We have never, ever not balanced our budget. We are not one of those councils, like several Labour councils, that are actually...
Hang on, stop! No, we're not doing that.
That are actually now having to issue a 114 notice. Birmingham is the prize one, of course.
Sorry?
No cuts in services. I'd like you to name some of the services that have actually been cut, Councillor Moran. If you could do that, we would be very pleased, because then we will look at why they've been cut, because it may well be because we no longer are required to do that service. And with regards to growth, that's already been touched on by Councillor Picker. I won't go back over that, but we are a growing town. We are one of the fastest growing boroughs in the country. And you may sit there and laugh, young man. You don't even work in this town. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Point of order, please.
To Councillor Moore.
In the town. I have businesses in the town, but that's irrelevant, but you're factually incorrect. But the main point of order is, Councillor Picker, I think you perhaps clarify what you said about Section 106 and seal money.
He wasn't speaking, Councillor Brown.
Okay. It's okay.
Excuse me, I am chairing this meeting. Okay.
Thank you. So, a point of order from that general blurb. One, yes, I do work in the town, pay big taxes in the town, thank you. But secondly, much more importantly, if the Conservative administration conflate SIL and Section 106 so crudely, then it's no wonder this council is in such a mess.
Move on, please. So, moving on to the next report. Season of Goodwill. I think the point of order was to the first question, Councillor Parker. Can you put your light off, please, because I'm speaking? And it was to the fact that Councillor Robbins had actually said that Councillor Moran doesn't actually work in the town. And I agree the second one was a little bit off pitch, but then quite often a lot of you are off pitch. So can we move on to the next business, please?
Well, with respect, Madam Mayor, it appears to me tonight, as I'm sure it hasn't passed the notice of colleagues on this side, that we've just allowed one councillor to criticise the financial alleged failings of this council, and when a councillor stands and rebuts it, as Councillor Robbins did, she is hushed for politicising. It is one rule for one and another for another. So I would like all councillors to be treated equally.
I'm going to ask you to remove. You will be removed if you do that again, because I'm not having it. That's it. I was pulling up because we were getting into a wider debate, and I'm trying to stick with the debate that we're talking about today, which is rugby, nothing else. And it was getting heated, and I'm the chair, and I made the decision. Please turn your mic off.
The
I'll turn
moment
it off, and
Councillor Robbins
I
am showing respect. I'm respecting the democratic right of all councillors to rebut when criticised.
Councillor Parker, if I can just intervene as well, just on behalf of the Mayor. Please respect the Mayor as the chair of the meeting. And just to clarify in terms of my view in terms of what's taken place. So we had Councillor Robbins exercising her right of reply, and during that right of reply, she invited Councillor Moran in terms of a particular point, and Councillor Moran raised a point of order, and thereafter, in my view, exercised a personal explanation in terms of the debate that took place. The Mayor has thereafter intervened and requested that the meeting be continued, and I would support that.
Thank you. So moving on, Councillor Wills, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 5 of the report titled Additional Disabled Facility Grants Funding 2023-24?
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Who seconded it?
Madam Mayor, I will second the motion.
Would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report sets out the proposal, good news, you'll be pleased to hear on this Christmassy night, to transfer additional funding of £62,500 for additional delivery of the Disabled Facilities Grant. Colleagues will remember, of course, that earlier this year we heard the full amount, and indeed questions from a colleague across the floor, Councillor Carradine, in terms of the time limits of the bill to deliver those. But putting that aside, this is a good news story, colleagues. For 23-24, we had an initial allocation of over 700,000, and that now sees another 62,500 going in. What does it mean to the good people at Rugby? It means we have additional funding which will enable an increase in the delivery and level of those services for some of our most vulnerable residents. Madam Mayor, I won't sort of go over old ground and talk what the Heart project is, but it's a good news story both in Rugby and across the county. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any further speakers? Right to reply?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on. It's you again, Councillor Wills. Will you move confirmation and adoption of item 6 of the report of Cabinet titled Support of the Voluntary and Community Sector 2024-25?
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Who will second it?
I will second it, Madam Mayor.
Would you like to introduce the report, please, Councillor Wills?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report outlines the proposals for our financial support to the voluntary and community sector, part of our budget setting process for 24-25. Members would note that it does not include Brandcab or indeed Carver, as these are contractual arrangements. In terms of the current position, our support offer has evolved over some time and takes into account new opportunities, which has included the introduction of Rugby Lotto. In terms of proposed continued investment, we will uplift by 6.7% inflation. And new for 24-25 is a proposed fund of £1,000 for each of the community associations. This will be administered in consultation with ward members to support smaller organisations with each of the ward. Opportunity to nurture smaller groups with £300 grants. Helps to redefine our role as a county, at the council as an enabler. Further evidence of our enabling role is the ring-fenced reserve of £10,000 for 24-25, down for £15,000. Usage on that has been minimal, to say the least. Recommendation has been made that we continue funding the food bank at 23-24 levels, but with an uplift to allow for inflation during 24-25 in response to a large percentage increase. We will be looking at numbers in excess of 10,000. So we see that uplift from 68,000 to 72,500. So in all, Madam Mayor, a recommendation that we accept the proposal and move forward in what is yet another good news story. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any speakers, please? Would you like a right to reply?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
And it's you again, Councillor. So will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 7 of the report titled Housing Revenue Stock Condition Survey?
I so move, Madam Mayor.
Who will second you?
I will second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report sets out recommendations for conducting Phase 1 of a much-needed stock condition survey of the housing revenue account properties. This is long overdue and will now give us the chance to look at what we have our own stock and what improvements we can make. This is for Phase 1, and we will look to 60% of homes and 100% of the communal areas in our properties. The cost of Phase 1, on an evening of financial discussion and debate, will be £283,000, and this will be met from the HRA reserves. The proposal also recommends that as part of our future budget setting, provisions should be made for delivering a rolling programme of 20% per annum. The scale, logistics and risks associated with the project requires the work is best undertaken by a suitably qualified, experienced and adequately resourced contractor who will look at 4 standards: safety and quality standard, transparency, influence and accountability standard, neighbourhood and community standard, and tenancy standard. In terms of Phase 1, there will be 2,300 surveys, 200 communal areas considered, and 700 energy performance certificates, as we endeavour to provide a better housing solution for our tenants. So in terms of the recommendation, we move into looking at a rolling programme of 20% stock condition, a supplementary budget of £283,000 to deliver, in order that we provide high-quality homes for our current and future tenants. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any speakers, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment to this item, which is a small amendment, adding a couple of things to the report.
Is there a seconder for the amendment?
I'll second it. And reserve the right to speak.
Councillor C.
So we really welcome this proposal to carry out a condition survey, but I do think there are a couple of things that perhaps need a little bit of clarification. We'd like to ensure that the 60% survey is spread right across the borough wherever there are suitable houses, rather than if we happen to have 60% of our houses in one location, it's just all done there. And that similar geographical spread is maintained across subsequent years. And then the other thing which really does concern me is the suggestion in the report that the contractor would do all the communication. I do think we're going to have to, as a council, do some tenant engagement before the contractor starts contacting people, because people will be quite rightly suspicious of someone coming along and claiming to work for the council. So it is really to ask for some tenant engagement to be carried out prior to the contractor contacting people, and then at the end of the survey to do some further tenant engagement, because if a lot of things come up that need to have remedial action, some people might be expecting things to get done straight away, and they might have to wait a while because stuff takes longer, as we know, it never goes to plan.
Hang on, can call Councillor Douglas first.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, speaking on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group, when we looked at the recommendation as in the report as well as the amendment, I think the amendment is well intentioned, but we need to be careful, I think, not to add additional levels of complexity into the criteria in terms of the assessment of the properties, which potentially the 6% in each location may move us to. I think initially, you know, extending the requirement as well, whether there's and the tenant engagement, what is the impact assessment on the additional or the existing role that council officers are doing in that space. Ultimately, you know, all this work will be added to contractors, but there's no additional budget line in terms of extending the requirements in the report. So I actually think the recommendations in the report as written allow the council to be fairly agile. The work will be done in a phased way over time, not necessarily stop-start. And I think the important bit is also in terms of the EPCs, as I understand it, we'll be moving to a situation where when upgrades are done, the EPCs are done, and as I say, not just waiting for the expiry on the 10 years. So I think the report, the recommendation as written, does allow us to be agile and is a phased approach and long needed. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to both councillors. First of all, Councillor Livesey for tabling the amendment, and indeed well-intentioned, as indeed it is, and indeed to Councillor Douglas for eloquently setting out perhaps concerns. I have another concern, and that is, councillors, where the role of officer stops and starts, and indeed where the role of councillor begins. Perhaps it's the officer in me, over years of, as an officer, being an expert and reporting that expertise and knowledge to a council. And I think we have to trust that. I've just got a few comments, and I think Councillor Douglas again has picked up on them. And the first thing that sort of jumped out was we don't have an understanding as yet of what those additional costs would be, and indeed what the impact would be on our resources, the additional resources, which we agreed in this chamber in October to increase the numbers so we can deliver a better housing service, boots on the ground. I'm concerned that the proposal may potentially undermine the ability of the appointed contractor in terms of their agility to carry out the surveys. In terms of, in addition to that, that recently agreed additional resource will underpin that agility and work with those contractors. In terms of the stock condition, we need to ensure that we are prioritising the right properties. And again, I would look to the officers to do that. In terms of the communications, the report does spell out, I think it's at section 4, that there is a communications plan in place. And that will be carried out by the contractor. And again, we mustn't undermine the skills of that contractor. And that will be complemented by the officers at the Borough Council. Essentially, colleagues, we need to be agile and maximise contractor time for carrying out inspections and maximise officer time, not duplicating anything that actually will deliver what it is I think we all want, and I think made clear at the last council. We want more housing resources working with our customers. If we go down this track, we actually risk, I think, returning to the position where we don't have enough resource to meet the need of our customers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any further speakers?
Madam Mayor, Councillor Willis, I just wanted to respond because I think you touched on a really, really salient point there. And I think I do understand clearly that there is an overlap between councillor expertise, councillor responsibility and officer expertise. But I think we've got to be very careful in terms of treading a line, because it is our right, it is our job as councillors to express concern. So I think where my colleague Councillor Livesey is highlighting concerns as to how the elderly and the vulnerable will be impacted by essentially random phone calls, that's a legitimate concern, as you concede. And I think perhaps then in the reporting, those concerns could be better addressed so that there isn't that concern. But I think the last point in terms of resource, I think we're touching on here the impact on our resource here. And we had a friendly exchange then just earlier regarding council finances. But if council finances are in rude health, then I think that the duty that we have to provide excellent homes to our residents is infinite. We have to do our job. So I'm concerned that resource is presented in that way. But also I think perhaps just it's great that you're engaged in this, but to understand your opening comment, you said how long this stock survey is very long overdue. Can you, I must have missed it, could you confirm how long overdue? When was the last survey done?
Before we do that, if there aren't any more speakers, because we're still debating the amendment, I will call on Councillor Livesey for her right to reply.
So all I want to do is just make sure that we get this done right first time. And, you know, my own expertise in acting as a contractor for other organisations and contacting people directly is that you don't always get the best response if they haven't been warmed up first by the people they trust. So that's all I'm trying to do with this amendment, is to make sure that we get the maximum engagement from our tenants. But that first, in my view, that first approach has to come from the council.
You've got a right to reply, Councillor Willis.
I'm more than happy to note the comments, and I think the comments are well made, and thank you. I think we are very much on the same page. I think it's just that we're taking slightly different routes to get there, so fully acknowledge the comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Which were right at the end of the report. So obviously we'll vote on the whole of the report, but I'm thinking we need to vote on this amendment first to see whether it becomes a substantive part of the whole of the report. So those in favour of the amendment, can you please show? Thank you. Those against? Thank you. The amendment falls. Thank you. So, moving on. So, as usual practice, in moving for confirmation and adoption of the whole report, can this take place now en bloc, which is in accordance with the previous full council meetings, or upon any member requesting a vote, which we've just done? Does any member wish... No, sorry, I need to just say... Can we just vote on the whole of the report, please? Those in favour, please show.
Madam Mayor, you need to ask if members want to have a vote on each item separately.
Oh, is that what you're saying? You want to go through the whole... Okay.
No, we need to ask them what they want. So if we just read that part.
Okay. In moving for the confirmation and adoption of the whole report, this can take place en bloc, which is in accordance with the previous full council meeting, or upon any member's request, a vote can be taken separately for each part of the report, or you can take it en bloc. Does any member wish for a vote to be taken in respect of each individual report? Please show if you do. No? Okay. So, I now submit for confirmation and adoption the whole of the report. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. It's carried. The motion is carried. So, 7, to receive the report of officers. The next item is to receive the report of the Chief Officer for the Legal and Governance set out at item 7A of the agenda. The report concerns the Council's annual pay policy statement. Councillor Ms Robbins, will you remove the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I so move.
Who will second it?
I will second it, Madam Mayor.
Do you want to introduce the report?
Actually, Madam Mayor, I think the report speaks for itself, and I think everyone's quite happy with it. Thank you.
Okay. Any speakers, please? No. Do you want your right to reply? No? Okay. Okay. Those in favour of the report, please show. That's carried. Thank you. The next item is to receive the report of the Chief Officer for Legal and Governance at item 7B of the agenda. The report concerns appointments to outside bodies. I see two bodies have just, councillors, two councillors, not bodies, sorry, two councillors have left the chamber. So, Councillor Miss Robbins, will you remove the report, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I so move.
Who will second it, please?
I will second it, Madam Mayor, and reserve my right to speak on this one.
Are there any speakers, please?
Well, I'd just like to say, Madam Mayor, that I've been a trustee of the almshouses for a few years now, and I've got to say that Councillor Roodhouse and Councillor Mrs Roodhouse have done a sterling job, and we ought to applaud the sterling work they've done. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Great minds think alike. I was going to echo and say exactly the same thing. Thank you.
I'll make sure they know. Right to reply?
No, not really, Madam Mayor. Just to say it's good that they are willing to stand again, because we want them to continue the good work. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
For the reserved right as well?
I think it's all been said, Madam Mayor.
Can
So,
we invite them back in the chamber?
yeah, I'm just going. Could we ask the two councillors back in? Can I just say, councillors, welcome back to the chamber, and just to put on record that thanks to the sterling work that you've done has been put on record by Councillor Moran and Councillor Gillias. So thank you very much for your hard work, hence the clap.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I thank Councillor Gillias and Michael Moran as well. As Tony knows, it's been quite a difficult 12 months with a certain gentleman who's now 6 foot under on and I'm not being serious there as well, because you don't know the full story that sits behind there. So perhaps after tonight, if you want to know the full story, we can talk about it.
Oh, moving on. So the next item is to receive the report of the returning officer set out at item 7C of the agenda. Report concerns a review of polling districts and places for 2023. Councillor Miss Robbins, will you move the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I so move.
Who will second it?
Madam Mayor, I will second the report.
To speak to the report?
Just very quickly, Madam Mayor, the polling stations that have been changed, you can see marked in yellow on the report. You will note there are some blue comments. They are the only two people who actually replied to the consultation. That's the only points I want to make. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any further speakers? Councillor Mistry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there were a small group of council cross-party met with the officers, and we went through the quite a comprehensive maps and looked at all the possibility of various gaps in the polling station, because the Rugby town has grown to quite a substantial, boundaries, if you like, which is extending almost where people have to walk 2-3 miles. And some of it's been addressed. There were follow-up meetings that should have taken place, but I've been assured by the officers that this work will continue because it's not quite finished, because there are issues that I think I've been telling the members, and they need to put some input into it to address that there are areas where people shouldn't be walking miles and miles to go to a polling station. They're taking away that democratic right. There are vulnerable people, things like there's no buses that goes to the area, to the polling station. So I think it needs that. So some part of it's addressed with the input, but that input, like the portfolio that quite rightly said, it's been very small. But I think we are the elected members, we should be taking the lead and address it. And some of us who are, going out leafleting and canvassing knows what the issue are. We hear it on the doorstep. So I think this is not the end of it. We'll continue this process because a whole month was taken up by the by-election, so we never had a follow-up meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mistrine. The officer did indicated that there'd be more work, but can I go back to the mover of the report? Would you like to reply, or the person that reserved their right like to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say, this is a moving feast. It will continue to move over the years. There will always be changes. But I would like to thank Councillor Mistry for his comments and for the people who actually went through this review. And also, yes, it is due to growth. We are a fast-growing town, Councillor Mistry. Thank you very much.
So we'll move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you. On to item 8, notice of motions pursuant to Standing Order 11, set out at item 8 of the agenda are 4 notices of motions. In accordance with Council's standing orders, I consider that all 4 should be considered and debated this evening, although I have been told that one of them is going to scrutiny, so that will not. The one on the social supermarket, I believe, I'm correct in saying that, only the mover and the seconder of that will be invited to speak, and that will not go to debate because I believe I'm correct in saying that will be going to scrutiny. So, Councillor Mrs Kensey, will you move the motion set out at item 8A of the agenda, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11, and it has been amended from the original one that was published. Thank you.
Hello, yes, I move the motion. I don't think this one has been amended. This is the heat pump. Sorry, the first one is heat pumps, which I'm not aware of any amendments to this motion. Thank you.
So, I call on Councillor Mackenzie to speak to her motion.
Can I second the motion, Madam Mayor? I'm not going to reserve my right to speak. I'll get on with it now, really. One of the reasons is it's Christmas, isn't it? Happy Christmas. Hope you all have a good 2024. It's been a long day as well. So, it's even longer tomorrow. Anyhow, when is Christmas Eve? Saturday. Okay. Anyhow, so getting back to the point, this motion came about from a particular church in Rugby, and it wanted to put air source heat pumps in there to reduce its costs, and the diocese was telling it to do that, and also the government was telling it to do that, and everybody else was telling them to do that. So they thought, that's a good idea. We'll put some air source heat pumps out there. So off it goes for planning applications and things, and then all of a sudden they've paid that money and going through it. Next minute, our environmental health people get involved with noise assessments and everything else. Then they have to pay out for another £2,000 for this, another more money for that, and a noise assessment, the rest of it. And it all revolves around MCS 20 and BS 4142. So really, if we send it off to climate change, the chairman of climate change can come to a decision. But what I think we need as a council, if we're talking about air source heat pumps for community halls, village halls, churches, whatever it may be, they're doing it for the best will. Oh, by the way, there was no objections to these heat pumps from the planning application process at all, going through there. And I think what we do need to do as a council is, could we please get a defined policy that helps and supports organisations across the borough, because we know it's the right thing to do, and that perhaps would help also these organisations to go forward. The person who's involved with it is an engineer as well, which doesn't help. So you get an email with about 54 pages of technical data, which is sat behind it, which is great. But yeah, I said perhaps for a council meeting, that's not what they want. Well, it could be actually, but you never know. The idea is it goes off to the Climate Change Working Party. We can have that debate there, pull in more information, what other local authorities are doing, and get a clear-cut policy area. So if somebody's looking for air source heat pumps from the voluntary sector or churches, whatever it may be, they can actually get it and get the job done, and not find out at the end of the process that, oops, we've got to get a noise assessment because that bit of the council didn't really join up to that bit to get it all sorted out at the beginning before they enter the process. So it's a plea, really, and I hope the council supports it.
Any more speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I, as Chair of the Climate Emergency Working Group, thank Councillor Mackenzie and Councillor Roodhouse for bringing this to our attention. It sounds like one of those areas where our policies just need looking at more carefully, making sure that they are fully fit for purpose. I think air source heat pumps are an important element of the work going on to combat climate change and make buildings more energy efficient. I think, Councillor Roodhouse, you said that the chair of the working group could take a decision. I fear you're investing me with powers that I don't actually have. Unless you're volunteering to give me some additional powers, that would be a terrible idea. But no, I'm really pleased that this has come to council. Very happy to have a look at it in more detail through the Climate Emergency Working Group and come back with a recommendation in due course. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any more speakers? Councillor.
Yeah, just to say that the Labour Group is also fully in support of this motion.
Mackenzie, would you like to come back, please? Your right to reply.
I'll do my right to reply and my actual comment in the, all in one. The only thing I was going to raise was actually you have permitted development for domestic properties meeting this particular noise standard, and if you think about how close together they are in a terrace and that's deemed noise appropriate, community buildings like churches, halls, community halls tend to have neighbours further apart, so it seems perverse that they should be subject to a noise standard when a terraced house wouldn't be. That was the only other point I was going to make, but I'm pleased we have cross-party agreement on this issue. Thank you.
Any further speakers? If not, we'll move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Mrs Brown, will you please move the motion set out at item 8B of the agenda, notice which has been given under Standing Order 11.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the original, there's a reference to the Town Centre Working Group. That's been removed now, and it's proposed that the Task and Finish Group reports to scrutiny. So it's slightly different. We're reverting back to the original.
Who's seconding it, please?
I am seconding it, Mayor.
Thank you.
And I reserve my right to speak.
Okay. Councillor Brown, I just needed to.
Can I speak to it? Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. I won't rehearse the reasons for supporting people in food poverty. They're blindingly obvious to all of us. I just want to make the point that we can't conflate a growth in numbers in terms of people residing in the town with a growth in economic success. And we're seeing, I think it was a 34% increase this year in people using that emergency short-term support that the food bank offers compared with the same period last year. That's colossal, actually. Centres, large and small centres providing food support, the meal clubs that run and the grocery clubs are facing very real pressures in their capacity to provide. A significant percentage of people accessing support there are in work, and you will know there may be people in this building who are accessing support from food banks too. What's proposed is not a replicant, and I'll explain a little bit about it, but first of all, just to establish, there are two main questions I think that I would ask if I was sitting where you are. about why this is proposed and going forward to scrutiny. The first question would be, why choose the town centre as a venue? And the second one would be, why is it initiated by Rugby Brough Council? What roles the Borough Council got in this? So I've thought really hard about it. And the first point is, firstly, our existing community pantries can't be everywhere currently, and not unexpectedly, because it's voluntary. There are areas which don't have a community pantry at all, whereas a community supermarket that was based in town and close to public transport will be accessible to many more residents. Secondly, and very importantly, our existing community pantries operate under considerable and increasing pressure. Staffing to maintain opening hours, sourcing and storing enough quality food and essential goods, and maintaining sufficiently accessible premises. That's really challenging. Is it appropriate to lay more expectation on those organisations as they exist, or is it more appropriate to offer them opportunities to gain, well, bigger and better economies of scale, and for an organisation to take some of the strain as the number of users grow? I don't want to preempt the outcomes of a task and finish group, but I think you need to know what I see as some of the principles that would underpin it. The first thing, this is supposed to be, it will be, an empowering initiative. It's not aimed at creating a dependency. It complements existing provisions such as the community pantries that exist and supports the work of the food bank. And its ambition is to build a pathway towards a not-for-profit organisation which maintains a strong link to Rugby Brough Council, but which becomes self-sustaining over the next few years. It works from the premise that Rugby Brough Council has a lead role to play in activating the community supermarket. We've seen the most successful provision, for example, the community pantry that runs in Lillington is one. It's needed the stimulus and support of local government, as well as its traditional voluntary supporters, to get it going, to keep it maintained, and to work on future plans to move it forward and make it self-sustaining. We know, sadly, rugby wasn't included in the initiative from the County Council, so we've got to step up, I believe, as the Borough Council and investigate what is achievable. I won't minimise, you know, it sounds so easy, doesn't it? I won't minimise the difficulties that are inherent in this. Warwickshire County Council's report to Cabinet this week states that the time involved in running Lillington, for example, equates to the time that's involved in running a small business. I am not surprised. The volume, the number of people who use it, the amount of stuff they shift, and their desire to make it as accessible and inclusive of other services too now. They do a cracking job there. I'm not surprised that it's taking the time and effort that a small business would take. The cost is approximately 300... It doesn't make it any easier if I stumble over the amount. I'm sorry, excuse me. The cost is approximately £300,000 a year, which I was going to say, which we don't have. Perhaps we do. But I'd be astonished if we did. We don't have access to additional funding to embed community-led management, but we do have connections with people who source bids, who can encourage community involvement, and can advise on the development of provision. We've got those kind of, just got 1 minute. So we're asking for your support, and it's going to task and finish. I think this is a marvellous opportunity for us to do something, as a council, really significant. Thank you.
Councillor McKenzie. Since I am the Cabinet member responsible for taking the community pantries paper tomorrow to Warwickshire County Council Cabinet, I better declare an interest. No, I'm just declaring an interest.
Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to do a long speech. I just wanted to say I'd like to implore all councillors across the chamber in every party to get involved in this working group. I think we all have a duty and responsibility towards our constituents. We know that there are a lot of constituents who are facing food scarcity. We also know we're in the middle of a climate crisis, and unlike the food bank, community pantries or community supermarkets, however you wish to describe them, are an opportunity for fresh food to also be distributed. I think it is a huge project if we're going to do it right, which is another reason to implore you all to get involved in it. But I think actually we have a duty to actually step up as a council and lead and bring in those organisations. There are some amazing organisations out there doing bits and pieces of work, and the county council has been involved, but not here in Rugby Borough. And I would just implore everyone to get involved in it, and actually let's lead the way forward to reducing food scarcity within our borough. Thank you.
Okay, we're not taking a vote. We're not taking a vote on it because it's going straight to scrutiny, and there will be no other speakers because that's what the rules say. So I'm moving on to the next item, which is Councillor Mrs. Livesley. Councillor Mrs. Livesley, will you please move the motion set out at item 8C of the agenda, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I so move.
I will second it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will second the motion.
Okay. Councillors? Yeah.
So this motion is to ask officers to do some work to consider whether it's time for us to start thinking about how often we hold elections. I have to say that when I agreed to stand for the council, I didn't imagine I'd be spending so much time in shoe shops, because every year I'm out there working my way through my favourite pair of shoes or boots, more normally because it's normally pouring with rain. But yes, I think it's time that we looked at how often we have our elections and whether there is an alternative way of doing it rather than having elections every year for 3 years and then having a year off, sort of. There are various models to look at. So the proposal is that we ask officers to go away and investigate these different options and come back to us with a fully analysed choice. One of the things that we have a problem with having elections every year is that we're always campaigning. And that means that we only get 6 meetings a year like this where we can actually discuss policy issues. 2 meetings are reserved for the budget. We have that odd little April meeting where we can only discuss boring things. And so I think if we did move to a situation where we had elections less frequently, we would have some time to see how things that get put forward at council can actually grow and develop. As I said, we're not calling for a change today. We're calling for the research to be undertaken, and that's really where I'd like to leave it for now.
Speakers, please. Councillor Becker.
Madam Mayor, can I move the amendment set out in my name, please?
Second that.
Can I second that and reserve my right to speak?
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillors Livesey and Mystery for bringing the the motion forward. I think it's touched on a number of different issues. And I think the purpose of the amendment that has been set out by myself and Councillor Roodhouse is actually to widen the scope of what we're discussing today. And the reason for that is as we've touched on a number of times this evening, Rugby is a growing town. And over the past few years, many of our wards have grown. And there is an opportunity, I think, in what you've alluded to, in the fallow year where this authority won't have elections, for us to take a look alongside the Boundary Commission at the sizes of our wards, the makeup of our wards, and yes, our electoral cycle. I must be a little bit honest. I don't fully agree with some of the comments you've made about constant campaigning. I think that because we are a authority that elects by thirds, we are always in touch with our residents. We're always out there talking to them, and I think there are not always as many advantages to moving to an all-out election, but there are obviously some. Stability for the council is one of them. So I agree that we should look at all of these issues, and that's the purpose of this amendment to the motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any more speakers? Councillor Tim.
I'm going to speak. Sorry, I've been well trained by Councillor Roodhouse. I have to stand if you want to speak. I think just wanted to, I think there's definitely merit in the original motion and what's being proposed as the amendment. The issue must be looked at, and I think it has been looked at before. I think we, as budgets in areas are scrutinised across the council, have we scrutinised the cost of democracy in the previous years? I think certainly the executive, from an officer point of view, would welcome probably 4 years in terms of strategy, policy, not chip and change. And I would actually caution politically moving to all-out elections, although this is only a review every 4 years. Be careful what you wish for, should that fall in a general election year, for example. But I think the wider point is, with any review in terms of election cycles, and I think we are touching on numbers of councillors in wards and ward boundaries, we have to also look at the impact of the role of the councillor as well. And certainly reducing numbers in wards would increase potentially the burden on the individual councillors and those working and etc. And I think we all want to see more people become councillors, not less. So I'm very much in favour of the motion and the amendments, but just some thoughts to add into future conversations as we review this going forward. Thank you.
Any more speakers? House.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, on this particular amendment, it's I have sympathies with where we're going from. We've debated in this chamber over the years moving to all-out elections, and one thing I know Councillor Mystery is aware of that, as of Councillor Robbins. I don't know how many times it's been talked about on and off over the years. But as we're probably aware, the council moves in cycles as we do that. And if we think about the last time, was it 2011, 2012, when the last review was done for this local authority, it's quite clear now that we're probably at what the boundary people call some triggering points. We can't be far off. And I know there's probably a couple of wards in the borough now that have either gone through that barrier and have now probably triggered that. And I've been told by officers the boundary people get all the figures from us, so they're monitoring that all the time. And it would not surprise me in the least that they would come here within the next 1 to 2 years to conduct something over it. So probably it's quite a good time now to actually kickstart the debate and discussion, because there's certain elements. And Councillor Douglas is right, really. You know, you have to be careful what you wish for sometimes, because the debate really is, do you reduce the number of councillors, move to single-member wards? You know, where do you go? Because that was one of the debates that was had. Was it 32 to 36 members on single-member wards? And there was discussion, is it 35? But I think there was one member who was at 32 at the time. So it's quite a complex area. Those of you who like jigsaw puzzles, you'll love this. You'll really love this. This is not a 1,000-piece. This is about a 2,000-piece jigsaw. And because once you start moving things around, it moves everything else as well. And that's part of the issues with it. And it does soak up quite a lot of time. From an elected member perspective and also from an officer's perspective as you go through it. So I'm pretty sure with this, and I think there's a friendly amendment going to be proposed by Councillor Moran and seconded by my colleague Councillor Edwards, which talks about bringing some information forward earlier, which I'm more than happy, and I hope Councillor Picker's more than happy with it as well, to do that, because I think it's the right thing to do in the sense of at least getting the debate forward and the debate moving in relation to that. And yeah, we'll see what comes out from that, really.
Any more speakers? Councillor, right, can I just say, just because it is really, and obviously you've got to move your amendment, it's a bit complicated when you've got an amendment on an amendment. And I've been told, just so we're really clear, you've got a right of reply, Councillor Pickett, you've got a right at the end. You just said you had.
It says here. It says amendment. It says here, member
moving the amendment.
Has
yeah.
no right of reply. Only Alison has a right.
So it's only Alison.
Yes.
Okay. Just so we're really clear about this, because it's different when there's an extra amendment. So because there's an extra amendment, you don't get a right to reply. Only Alison, because she moved the original amendment. So thank you. The original motion. So thank you very much, everybody, for making it so difficult. I will remember this. So, Councillor Moran, would you like?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to wish to move an amendment to the original motion. But actually, for a very, very simple reasons, and I think what has been touched on, and it's great to understand the history of what's been debated here in the past, and equally to listen to Councillor Douglas of potentially kind of quite deep and meaningful issues that it may arouse. That's great. The point is it's relevant, and I think this comes to the heart of the amendment to the amendment. That, God, waiting for the work to be done until sometime in 2025 is just too late. It's a relevant, salient issue, even for the point of democracy, let alone potential cost savings or not. Let's get it looked at, have an update, and let's discuss it. So whatever may come from that, we'll have different political views or different interests, whatever, that's great. But the point is, it's a big relevant issue, so the purpose of the amendment was just let's have an interim update at the earliest possible opportunity. Thank you.
Who's seconding that?
I second the amendment to the amendment, Madam Mayor.
Yeah. Any speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say I do support the amendment to the amendment. I think that's where we're at. I think the elephant in the room really for all of us is actually the requirement for the Boundary Commission to come in and look at the boundaries. I think if you look at Admirals and Corston at the last election compared to Bilton, there were 35% more voters in Admirals and Corston than there were in the Bilton ward. That's, clearly that is undemocratic. It needs to be evened out. We're seeing that nationally. So I think it is important that we have this discussion. I think February would have been a tight timetable on the original notice of motion, to be fair to officers, but I think April seems like a reasonable compromise. It would be good to have that information. If we're going to have new boundaries by 2026, I think we probably need to see the Boundary Commission popping into town maybe by the summer, looking at the time frames of Coventry and Nuneaton and Bedworth. Yeah, I'm happy to support this. Amendment to the amendment.
Just to clarify, Madam Mayor, I am happy to accept this as a friendly amendment to a friendly amendment, I think is where we're at.
Okay, are there any more speakers?
Happy Christmas, let's be friends.
I've got a headache, but anyway, Councillor Livesey, would you like your right to reply if there's no more speakers?
Well, thank you, everybody, and I think we're agreeing to accept this amendment, so that's all I'll say.
Okay, just to be clear, I'm going to take the amendment on the amendment first, and if that goes through, then I'll obviously have to take that becomes part of the substantive motion, I think. Okay, all those in favour of the amended amendment, please show. Yes, Thank you. That's carried. All those in favour of the amended motion, please show. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Moran, will you please move the motion set out item 8D of the agenda, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11.
I move that, Madam Mayor, yes.
We'll second that.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I will second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Moran.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's been a long evening. I'll try and keep this brief. I think, but where we have these different debates, so for example, without trying to ignore what's been said about a high growth town or whatever it's going to be, where we differ on those, there's an absence of genuine feedback. And I think the reason for wanting to bring this motion for debate was that I think there is an absence of that. I think genuinely everyone here is trying to do the best for their community. And I think sometimes we can get lost in a bubble. And I think where we have something so fundamental as the local plan, and to be absolutely frank, where consultation associated with the local plan is very, very poor. And that has a huge democratic deficit, where it could then lead to what becomes a unrestrained, awkward race for growth on growth and growth, and we're not getting a chance to value what we have. So consultation is critical both for the local plan debate that we're going into now, but generally I think the council's efforts in terms of consultation, there needs to be targets, there needs to be feedback, and it's fantastic to know that the council finances are not on their knees, as appears clear in black and white. But if they're not, that's great. We can allocate much more resourcing to consultation, which is what we're here and what we should be about. So I'm conscious that there is an amendment to that. We will accept the amendment. I know that the amendment is good intentioned, because clearly we're all talking about the local plan. So when we get into those local plan working groups, the nature of consultation from residents and businesses will be key to that. And the truth of the matter will be there in black and white in front of us. And we can see, do we have a good engagement across different socio-economic groups? Do we have good engagement across the borough? Have we made a concerted effort to reach those people who are hard to get to? So what will be, but I think the fact that we're debating the consultation is great. So I'm very happy to propose this motion.
Any more speakers?
Just to give notice of the amendment, Madam Mayor. Yes.
Madam Mayor, I will second the amendment and reserve my right to speak.
Any more speakers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I have lots of support for the motion before us, but I felt, looking at it in terms of the local plan, and some experience of dealing with the local plan, and there are one or two other members who did. With that local plan, we had over 3,000 submissions to that local plan last time. And what I felt that the motion was doing was preempting what was going to come out of that consultation. Now, clearly, if once we've done an analysis in Planning Services Working Party, we feel that there hasn't been a rounded consultation with the public, then that gives us the opportunity to pause it and do more work on it, or move it forward to overview and scrutiny to make recommendations. And that's the reasons for the amendment. It's not the principle of what was in it, and certainly myself and Councillor Mystery did raise our concerns about hard-to-reach groups being missed out of the consultation process. It's not just about the parish councils getting it, but it's also about the community associations getting the chance to participate. So I think that's where we are with the amendment. It is a friendly amendment, and I hope that will be taken on board by members.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I think the motion and the amendment are advancing things forward, but we're here yet again. I think we talked about community engagement at the last council, and I think we do need a wider, coordinated response to public engagement and consultations. But I do think we perhaps have to lower our expectations in any consultation engagement. It's up to us as councillors to go out and speak to the residents. We've certainly, in Paddocks, had numerous events with banners, leaflets, diagrams going through the previous local plan. And I can tell you, if you want consultation, when that local plan heats up, as we all know from that hot evening, metaphorically and physically, in the Ben Hall that we had when you had to stand there and vote on it, the public turned up in their hordes. So I do think we need to do more, but I think the emphasis has to be on us as councillors. We have to engage the officers and say, come to our wards and speak to residents. I think council officers, if they're not already doing, should be holding round tables with businesses and effective organisations and groups and reporting back. But fundamentally, I think it's up to us to go out there and speak to residents, engage them on this matter, and perhaps if we did move to 4 yearly elections, then we might have issues tucked away under the carpet that aren't arisen each year, and people and councillors go missing and don't engage. So I think we've got to get the balance right between what officers can do and what us as councillors should be doing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For any fully effective and inclusive consultation, following factors are very important to me. Language, it has to be simple. People can understand it. Knowledge of technology is very important. Involving young people is the most important. And feedback to all people who responded. Rugby is a multicultural town. There are a lot of people who are English as a second language. So it's very important to consider to how to include all of them. Similarly, a thought should be given to people who have limited knowledge of the technology. Contact with the young people is very important, as said. Their input is essential for any development of rugby. For me, feedback of the outcome and the proposed action plan is important to all participants. This conveys that their views have been heard and decision has been made on that basis and signifies the objective of the consultation. Thank you, Madam.
Can I call on Councillor Picker next?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm very grateful to hear that the amendment will be accepted as a friendly amendment, because I think, once again, we are all perhaps talking about the same thing, albeit in slightly different ways. So, as was set out during the consultation on the local plan, which was, of course, approved by this council in October, there are a number of different ways that people can engage with this particular consultation, including in-person events, engagement with parish councils, engagements with broader community organisations. I'm very pleased that Councillor Shrivastava just brought up engaging with young people. I am able to confirm that the development manager will be meeting with the Warwickshire Youth Council in order to speak to them about the local plan consultation. I also just want to be very clear that this is just the first stage. This is the issues and options stage. So at this stage, it does remain a rather high level and, to a degree, slightly nebulous piece of work where we're looking at some of the broad underlying issues and some of the areas that we want to address. As we move forward through any plan-making process, there will obviously be more detail, further consultation, and that's when I think we will get additional responses as those move forward. But as it does, Planning Services Working Party will continue to be engaged throughout. They will look at the consultation responses, and as they did when we began this process, they will make recommendations to Council and to Cabinet as to how we proceed. So from that perspective, we will continue to be engaged, and I'm sure we might even find some opportunities to continue to discuss still, Councillor Moran. In terms of the amendment and the wider issues of consultation, on this particular instance, obviously, in addition to everything that I've already set out, graphics have been prepared for us to use through our social media channels, and I hope that members have used those. Leaflets were produced and distributed at the briefing for councillors in November. If anyone wishes to have any additional leaflets, please do get in touch with either myself or the Development Strategy Manager, Neil Holly, who will be more than happy to provide some additional ones. So there is all this work, but obviously there are always going to be ways that we can improve. There are always going to be opportunities for learning, and so I'm more than happy for those opportunities to be looked at by both planning services and by scrutiny in terms of wider consultation. And finally, and I do think this is important, I do just want to place on record my thanks to the development strategy team who are going out there, who are doing this engagement, who are speaking to individuals, speaking to parishes, speaking to the youth council, speaking to developers. They are doing a tremendous job, and we are, of course, only part way through that process. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Caroline Watson-Mowat.
Madam Mayor, once I heard Councillor Douglas speaking, felt obliged to stand up, and much like Councillor Picker has just said, I feel that having recently attended some of the consultations, both on my ward, Corston, and then on our neighbouring patch, which is affected by lots of the developments, and we've seen over the years, that ward being Dunsmore Ward. Whilst the Corston event was not well attended, even though it had been equally well reported, but the Dunsmore Ward had us in one room, and it was absolutely packed, and there was a tremendous amount of questions and answers. Based on that, of course, the library was there, open to the general public as well on the following day, and lots of people steered others who couldn't make that meeting to the meeting at the public library. It was disappointing to hear Councillor Moran at our local Corston Parish meeting saying that he felt that the Rugby Brough Council had done a dreadful job and that we were being forced to meet in dusty, dingy halls and libraries across the county. His words exactly. And I was so disappointed because that is not the case, and we're proud of all our community halls, villages and libraries. However, I will just say that, as always, historically, when we look back at what happened last year, yes, it's the start of the process. It does pick up, but it always impacts on those residents where they feel it most, and they do consult. And you will see the knock-on effects of these early interventions where Neil Holly and his team have gone out. They have given us fabulous brochures with all the links, and they've opened their lines and offices to everyone who consults with them. They will give a detailed analysis of every question put forward. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Are there any further speakers before I give Michael, Councillor Singer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For something as important as the strategic future of our borough, we definitely do need reassurance that all reasonable efforts have been made to consult. And, of course, we put on record our gratitude to officers for the work that they have done. But it's really important, as Councillor Srivastrava has mentioned and others have mentioned, that we consult with those who are hard to reach. The young, the elderly, disabled, people who speak different languages, people who are not online. Everyone has an equal right to respond, but this isn't really an equal right if the consultation isn't as effective as it really could be. So in the spirit of Christmas, I would just like to draw our minds back to the notice of motion that I put forward about a citizens' jury, which colleagues across this chamber rejected on the grounds that there was so much consultation going on, so much expertise and diversity of thought in the way that we consult. And therefore, I would like us to have an opportunity to assess the consultation that has happened with that in mind, to determine whether or not we should reconsult, to utilise the expertise that colleagues across this chamber have already mentioned, all of the various mechanisms and means that can be done to consult the public. It's not our local plan, it's the community's local plan. So we really must strain every sinew to reach out to them and listen to them. And I think in the spirit of Christmas, I would just like to welcome colleagues to assess this consultation, use their expertise, bring their expertise and their community mindedness and knowledge to the table, and we can assess whether the consultation has truly been effective. Thank you.
Just make a point of, I think it's a personal explanation in the Constitution. Just on the points Councillor Singh has made, I think just reflecting on his analysis of the previous council, the citizens, certainly from my point of view, citizens panel wasn't rejected outright. It was perhaps part B of part A. And what I was saying is we haven't perhaps utilised all existing and maybe more simpler channels to engage with residents. And I think that is what that was the rejection of the citizens panel going a bit too far. And I think it overall calls for a greater communication strategy across the council in terms of consultations and other issue scrutiny as well. Thank you.
Are there any more speakers, or can I ask Councillor Moran to actually exercise his right to reply? No?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Councillor Watson-Meriden, I've never said the word dingy. It's not in my vocabulary. I may have said dusty in a friendly way. You can shake your head. I've never used the word dingy. But the point is to illustrate dusty village halls as an example of that is not a mechanism to engage with the demographic that counts. And I think the more meaningful point I want to make here, and again, I hesitate to correct you, Councillor Picker, but the start of the local plan process is not nebulous. And that may explain why we end up with local plans that are quite so poor, because our consultation efforts are genuinely very, very poor. There is not, let's count on one hand the number of people who are going to engage in are going to answer 38-part statements of responses. They're not. The point of, at the start of the local plan, should be, do we grow? How do we grow? Where do we grow? Some of the specifics of the arguments are being set at the start. And then by the time we get 3,000, 4,000, 6,000, whatever responses, it's too late. Because the process has got so much momentum, we're arguing, is it that field or that field? No, we're not arguing, should it be either field? Yeah. And my point is, so by not going into young people, not going into businesses and community groups, we're missing some of the fundamental concepts of what type of local plan do we want? What type of town do we want? So that's the concern. The consultation isn't good. It could be a lot better. And I think by doing a better consultation, we'll get a better local plan out of it, which whenever the local plan happens, whether it's this year, next year, or it is in years to come, that local plan is really, really important.
Okay, thank you. We will vote on the amendment first, please.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, could I just make a point of personal clarification, please? Because I think at least one of my comments were taken slightly out of context. So when I said nebulous, what I meant was in terms of we're talking about the very broad, high-level issues. Where do we want development? How do we want development? I do have to question whether you've read the consultation document, Councillor Moran, because that's what's in it.
Sorry, just a point of order. No, I have. Right. I have read the consultation, but again, just to be really specific, it's not, development isn't guaranteed. That's my point at the start. It doesn't have to happen, which is the implication of the process. Pardon me? Again.
Excuse me, through the chair. Have you finished making your point, Kat? Yeah, okay. Right, I'm moving to the vote on the amendment now then, please. All those in favour, please show. That's carried. So the motion is now amended. Can we vote on the amended motion? Please show. Thank you. That's carried.
There is none, Madam Mayor.
Right, so we're moving to number 10, Common Seal. I move the Common Seal be affixed to the various orders, deeds and documents referred to in the agenda. Who will second that?
I will second you, Madam Mayor.
Those in favour, please show. Thank you, that's carried. So, that concludes the business of the meeting. I would like to take this opportunity to wish the rugby communities a very joyful Christmas and a happy New Year. A special thank you to all of our town centre businesses, charities, community groups and volunteers who give so much to make rugby the very special place it is. We should all remember the words of Mother Teresa. It's not how much we give, but how much love we put into the giving. So, on that note, I will wish you all a happy Christmas. Streaming, please.